Welcome, welcome, welcome to Art for Moms with the Art Breakthrough, where you can relax and enjoy improving your art skills for busy moms. Today we are going to be drawing a nose, and I put "You've never drawn a nose like this" in the title because there are some unique features about this nose that are going to be different, that we are going to go through as we draw this together. So I'm excited, and go ahead and pull up a pencil and paper, and if you have a kneaded eraser, that comes in handy. If not, just grab any old eraser that you've got, and let's get started. So somehow I lost the beginning portion of, I guess I didn't hit record or something when I went to edit the video. It wasn't there. So I'm going to restart the beginning portion. But basically what you want to do to start is do the very most basic shape that you possibly can. So when you look at this nose, you might see a simple triangle. Okay, and then what you do from there is you're going to draw the ball of the nose. So you come to this edge and you start to curve out that corner there. And make sure you're drawing real nice and light so that you can erase these beginning stages, portions, as you progress through your drawing. Okay, now on this edge, we're going to bring this wing out. This, I like to use points of reference to decide how to measure where things go and where things are placed. So a lot of times you're going to see me reference this ball. Even after we erase it, I will bring up how to measure things in accordance to this. So with that in mind, we're going to go with this wing here, and if the ball is coming up here, the end of this wing comes here. So it's coming about a third of the way down of our ball. So think about that in thirds, and then draw lightly over to that edge, and looks like we've got a good starting point there, so that we can bring this down to that other edge there. Okay. All right, now we're going to bring this down. It doesn't really go lower than that, so I need to bring that back up. So our halfway point between the ball of the nose and the wing of the nose is about here. So you can gauge where to place that nostril. We've got a little small portion going outside of that halfway point. And so about there and about here, doesn't have to be exact. And you'll notice this line right here is fairly straight. It just curves down on those edges there. Okay, and then this hooks in. That's one of our very unique features that I haven't seen quite captured than how it is in this photo before. How that just kind of tucks in, and you still have this line prominently coming over. So that's different than what you normally see, which is a good thing to bring into practice. Different things happening. Okay, and that's going to be shaded later on. Now we have this wing, which is another reason why I thought this picture was particularly different, because you usually don't see that wing of the nose protruding out so much at this angle. So we're going to try and incorporate that. So when I come across here, let's see, come to the top of the nostril, that's about where the bottom of that wing is. So let's come out. Right there is where we'll start. Let's see where the top is. So if we take this and go across and then come a little bit further down, that's about where the top is. And it's not going too far out, but you can definitely see it. So that just kind of curves down and meets up with the other part of the nose right there. So now let's start to shape this side. We know that this is coming around. This line is going to stay because we have a shadow right there, as you can see. But as we come up and around, it comes a little bit above that line that we had right there. Not too far past it. And then it's going to swing back the other way. And as we kind of gauge where that shadow starts, let's place this in the middle of the nose again to get an idea of where that shadow starts. So it starts a little bit further over than where that nostril begins. So we're looking about here where that shadow starts, and then we've got the other shadow portion in there, which we'll address a little bit later on as well. So that's your basic starting point, and then we can go in and erase some of these lines as we start to shade in some of these details. Okay, so there's a lot of light happening right here, so it's a little bit difficult to tell where the cheek curves up and starts becoming the nose. So what I'm going to do is look at where the edge of this wing meets the eye, which is almost straight up. So let's go straight up from here. And it looks like the eye is just on this side right there. So that means we're going to be getting this shadow of the eye and underneath the eye coming. And we're not drawing the eye today, but we just want to give an indication of where that curvature begins on the planes of the skin of the face. Okay, so then this is going to curve up around that other edge. And then we have that shadow on this side, which is going to be pretty prominent and thick. However, you want to think about soft lines because it's very soft. There's no hard lines in these shadows over here. Okay. It looks like this goes a little bit further down than what I've got it. So if you need to adjust yours, go ahead and do that now as well. This thing is so big, I'm just going to rip off a little piece. Okay, let's go ahead and erase some of these lines that we don't need. Remember, we do need this line because that is what we're seeing in the picture. However, it does kind of right here fade into the shadow of the nostril, so we can erase that far edge line right there. There's no need to be in any rush. We're just relaxing together as we draw. Let's go ahead and erase those guidelines right there, because we're just going to go ahead and put in our shadows at this point. I think I've got that wing a little, that might be a little too narrow now that I'm looking at the picture. Let's see. Well, there's this shadow that comes this way. Yeah, that's about right. I think I'm just bringing up the shadow on this side. Ought to do the trick. So from the top of your wing, come up a little bit and start to place in that shadow right there. And then we've got this shadow that curves around the wing of the nose. And it's the shadow gets darker on the other side of this edge. The shadow coming down from the wing. So go ahead and place that in. This is the fun part. We get to kind of bring this to life. Fade that out gradually. You get lighter and lighter. So it's a very soft edge. Now let's fill in this nostril a little bit. I think I'm going to bring that up slightly, just ever so slightly. Okay. Now there's a shadow coming from underneath this line right there. And I want you to notice how there is shadow happening right here and shadow happening right here. Of course, this is really dark and it gets lighter, but then right in the middle, it's lighter than these shadows that it's in between. And that's going to be important to keep there because that indicates that this portion of the nose is protruding out and it's not actually a part of the inside of the nostril there. So keep that in mind as you're shading this portion. And I'm just taking my pencil and I'm doing little tiny circles because I'm trying to soften this edge so that I don't have a hard line. I want to avoid those hard lines whenever we can. Now I lost a little bit of that portion that goes in there. I'm going to have to come in and add that back in, but I'm going to start shading this portion first because I want to see how dark I want to get that area before I come in and erase that. Alright, once again, as you do this edge, it gets lighter as you go towards the edge of this wing on this side. Now I'm going to get a lot significantly lighter as I bring the shading towards the center of the nose here. It gets light pretty fast. Okay, let's find out where this shadow ends in relation to that imaginary circle, the ball of the nose. So we come down and it's almost reaching this edge of the nostril, so that's pretty far in. So I'm not even touching the paper, I'm just following that line up. However, I got that line a little too prominent, so I'm just gonna erase that. Now that I've got my eraser, let's go right down and lighten up that little spot right there. Sometimes it works good to just bring it to a small point and then dab, so you're not pulling off too much graphite, just a little portions at a time. See how small you can get that? Comes to quite a little point. Okay, good. Now I've got it too light, so there's kind of a back and forth that happens as you play with your drawing and work on it. And I was feeling like there's a little bit more of a lift on this portion of the nose where it's curving up. So I thickened that line a little bit more than it was. And then we'll come back the other way with this shadow on the inside. It's starting to take some shape there. Hold your pencil very light as you do these portions so you can keep it. If you're holding it light, then it's easier to not get it too dark. And I like to hold my pencil, as you can see, very far out. That might not be, that's not a right or wrong. It helps me get that angle. So I'm using this edge of the pencil portion, but you can experiment with that and find what works for you. You might just be here, and that's totally fine. And just finding where that darker portion of the shadow starts as we begin to draw this other shadow on the other side of the nose. So now we need to make that darker so we can know where the plane of the nose is protruding and where the cheek is going the other direction on the other side. Light, light, light. We're just indicating where those other planes are going so our nose can take shape. And we have a little bit of the laugh line shadow going, so you can see this is shadow, light, shadow. So kind of take notice, there's a little bit of a triangle here where that light is, kind of a wedge, kind of like that a little bit. So let's come in and do a little bit of that shadow over here on this other side. And then as you get to this edge, we're going to lighten that up so we can transition into the cheek and a lighter area where the light's hitting that. Now I've got that line a little bit too prominent, so I'm going to come back in and lift off some of that. Okay. I'm going to come back to that in a second. I'm just noticing that this portion, when you're thinking about our imaginary circle again, this half is more in shadow than what I've got it here. So here's our imaginary circle. Halfway through is about here. So let's shade some of that in a little bit. Dramatically lighter right away, so I'm barely contacting that paper. Just want to fade that. That a little darker, make this a little darker. It's just going back and forth, adjusting this and that until you get it to where it's something that you're pleased with. Sometimes it's a lot more back and forth than others. And bringing that portion of the nose in by shading the darker area inside of that line. All right, let's come back here now. I think that line might come a little bit higher than I originally had it, and this lighter portion comes down a little bit further over here. Okay. Now the last thing that we have is, whoops, I think that this wing kind of curves over a little bit further this way than what I've got indicated in this picture here. So I see a very, very subtle light shadow here, indicating kind of the ball portion of the wing. So I'm going to notice this curves up and comes a little bit further this way than halfway across the nostril. So I'm going to come up. I'm just imagining this right now instead of drawing it yet. So halfway is here, we come to about here. So now I can start to subtly shade that in to indicate that. It doesn't take much. You don't want this to become anything prominent. Just a very subtle add there, very subtle. And softening some of these lines in here. Darken some of those shadows up. Okay, I think we're pretty well there now. So, hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you're not satisfied with your picture, I invite you to simply try it again. Just practice and practice, you'll get there. So thank you so much for joining me today and taking this time for yourself, taking this time to relax and to improve your skill. And if you enjoyed this tutorial, I am sure you're going to like the next one. So go ahead and watch that next, and I will see you there.